The source of psychological stress can either be external or internal, but in both cases, one internalizes the resultant pain. My name is Ladi Ojas. Welcome to Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. Skeletal Leap transforms one's life into a personal heaven. Today's episode will tell you about what stress really means in terms of chakras and skeletal postures. Stress is a situation perceived by an organism either as a threat or a challenge that needs to be coped with. In case of Homo sapiens, this type of situation has two layers to it. The first one is biological stress, and the second, psychological. In the case of biological stress, it's the nervous system that perceives it as a threat or challenge. But in the case of psychological stress, it's the mind that comprehends the brain's perception as either a threat or as a challenge. Biological stress. In Homo sapiens, the following biological systems respond to stress. Number one, autonomic nervous system, and number two, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal or HPA axis. Sympathoadrenal medullary or SAM axis is capable via the sympathetic nervous system of switching a fight or flight response on. It directs a major portion of the body's energy resources to cope with the perceived stress before returning to homeostasis via the parasympathetic nervous system. On the other hand, the HPA axis releases cortisol to take care of metabolic and immunological functions in the meantime. The SAM and HPA axes are regulated by the following brain regions: limbic system, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, hypothalamus, and stria terminalis. These coping mechanisms perceive stressors as one among the five possible categories. Number one, acute time-limited stressors posing a short-term challenge. Number two, brief naturalistic stressors, normal yet challenging. Number three, stressful event sequences, sudden onset continuing in immediate future. Number four, chronic stressors continuing for long terms in future. And number five, distant stressors set to affect in distant future. Physiological stress disturbs the organism's homeostasis, which responds by stimulating the nervous, endocrine, and immune systems. This activates physical changes, showing their short or long-term effects on the body. Homeostasis is an ideal state of biochemical equilibrium. It often keeps getting disrupted by internal and external stimuli, thereby keeping it in a state of continual flux. But if and when this disruption goes beyond a certain range, we experience it as stress. In the presence of acute stress, the sympathetic nervous system takes over with a fight or flight response involving mydriasis, increased heartbeats, vasoconstriction, glycogenolysis, bronchodilation, gluconeogenesis, sweating, lipolysis, decreased motility of digestive system, epinephrine and cortisol secretion from adrenal medulla, and relaxation of bladder wall. After having coped with stress, the parasympathetic nervous system reestablishes rest and digest, that is, homeostasis response involving meiosis, bronchoconstriction, increased motility of digestive system, and contraction of bladder walls. The HPA axis is a neuroendocrine system for stress response which stimulates the steroid hormones. Stress also affects the immune system negatively. In fact, chronic long-term stress affects our quality of life by creating immune system dysfunction, chronic diseases, impaired growth in children, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, functional somatic syndromes, heart disease, asthma, diabetes, headaches, Alzheimer's disease, accelerated aging, premature death, insomnia, eating disorders, anxiety and panic attacks, colds and viruses, circulatory problems, and cancer. It's not only negative stressors that add to the stress level, even the positive stressors do the same. Here is a list of some categories that some common stressors belong to. Number one, sensory inputs like pain, bright lights, noise, temperatures, etc. Number two, environmental issues like lack of food, water, housing, health, freedom, mobility, etc. Number three, social issues like struggles, defeats, relationship conflicts, deception, breakups, births, deaths, marriages, divorces, etc. Number four, life experiences like poverty, sudden wealth acquisition, unemployment, depression, OCD, lack of sleep, performance pressures, exams, deadlines, etc. And number five, accidental experiences like sexual abuse, traumas, etc. Psychological stress. Psychological stress is a feeling of emotional pain. Small amounts of them are manageable as well as motivating at times, but their excess is debilitating. The source of psychological stress can either be external or internal, but in both cases, one internalizes the resultant pain. Hans Selye came up with quite a few experiments on stress and its theories in the 1930s. He conceived the theory of universal, non-specific stress response and initiated extensive research programs in academic physiology. Despite wide acceptance of his theories, experimental physiologists soon started opposing what they considered vague approaches in his research. Hence, in the 1950s, he turned away from experimental physiology and started promoting his theories via popular books and public speeches. His book, titled Stress of Life, addressed to the general public, turned out to be an international bestseller. His was a biopsychosocial concept of stress and dynamic adaptation to changing global challenges. It promised health and happiness to anyone that successfully employed this approach. He coined the terms eustress for positive stress and distress for negative stress. He also coined the term stressor to mean the cause of stress as separate from the state of stress. On top of it, he redefined tobacco smoking as a diversion or a deviation from environmental stress. Starting from the latter part of the 1960s, psychologists increasingly adopted Selye's approach. They undertook extensive research to establish connections between stress and stress-related diseases. By the latter part of the 1970s, stress had entered the common parlance globally. New research was conducted into the neuroendocrine, molecular, and immunological aspects of stress. This new research is no longer directly tied to Selye's hypothesis, though it doesn't negate it either. In the wake of the Vietnam War, a lot of research went into the newly coined post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. By the onset of the 1990s, stress had become one of the biggest buzzwords while referring to the modern day health and its complications. The discourse on stress spanned the entire spectrum from mild irritation to ultimate nervous breakdown. As recently as 2015, it was established through surveys that people's greatest stressors were money, family responsibility, and work. A new personality style, hardiness. In the year 1979, Suzanne C. Cabeza had discovered a new personality style which he named hardiness. It referred to the ability of a person to be chronically stressed yet healthy at the same time. This meant that the harmful effects of stress were not the same for all. They were as much due to stressors as they were due to fallible personality styles. And if we were able to train people to adopt hardiness as their personality style, the problem of stress would be gone. In 1984, Salvador Madi with Cabeza and their graduate students in the University of Chicago came up with another book. The book was titled The Hardy Executive, Health Under Stress, and it further elaborated the analysis of hardiness. It carried along a series of research reports done with executives in it. Since then, a lot of further research has been done on military groups, teachers, firefighters, and students along with executives. In addition, several efforts have been made to train people to adopt hardy personalities with mixed results. Research is still going on as newer training modules are being tried to achieve definitive results. Hardiness suggests a personality structure dispositioned along the traits of commitment, control, and challenge. Commitment was defined as a trait to get involved in what one was doing. Control was defined as a trait that made one believe one would be able to effect a change. And challenge was defined as a trait that took everything, including life, in flux rather than stability. In my opinion, the best example of a hardy personality was the co-founder of Apple Inc., named Steve Jobs. But the most charismatic man that he too couldn't keep himself healthy. This exceptionally hardy man died of pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, resulting in respiratory arrest at a young age of 55. What does that show? Is the entire hypothesis of Suzanne C. Cabeza a faulty one? I don't think so. I have my own example in front of me having similar, though not the same, traits in my personality. And I cannot write off hardiness that easily. I'm quite healthy in my 70s while I'm speaking these lines. As you already know, although I was born with myopia and contracted viral arthritis, which then turned into rheumatoid arthritis in 6 months, I was able to cure both with central fixation. I see a huge potential in Cabeza's hypothesis of hardiness. A newer personality style, lightness. I would like to change a few things in Cabeza's hypothesis. First of all, I would change its name from hardiness to lightness. Next, I would change its traits from commitment, control, and challenge to interest, insight, and adventure. Hardiness in general can be heavy, but we need it to be light rather than heavy. Doesn't matter if it's hard or soft. If it's light, it'll be able to fight. Like traveling light is always way more manageable than traveling with a lot of heavy stuff. Commitment as a structure of the mind requires us to believe in it, and belief turns the mind heavy. On the other hand, interest is an instinct generated out of curiosity. We don't need to believe in it. Thus, curiosity keeps our mind light. At the same time, it's much hardier and lighter than commitment. Control evokes conflict. It makes our mind even heavier. Insight, on the other hand, keeps it light because it arises directly out of the lightness of curiosity and interest. Therefore, it is more effective in creating change. Challenge, again, evokes conflict rather than passion or joy. It fills us with pride, which in turn makes our mind heavy. Adventure as an instinct is the better alternative. It has very deep roots in our psyche and it keeps us light and agile. These three traits, interest, insight, and adventure, do a splendid job of keeping us healthy. They are effective even under the toughest of biological stresses born out of an ever-changing environment. Psychological stress doesn't even stand a chance because it vanishes the moment we become carefree and light by emptying our mind. We don't need to be heavy like dinosaurs. We just need to be light like birds. That's perhaps why the next phase of evolution after dinosaurs gave rise to birds. This brings us to the question, how can people be trained to adopt lightness as a personality style? That is easy. Skeletal Leap already has a well-researched and documented system of opening chakras through skeletal reposturing. Once the repostured skeleton becomes one's first nature, the opened chakras allow energy to rise through the body. Then comes guided meditation. It pulls the Kundalini upward, relieving the body of stress. This ascension of energy along Sushumna from the coccyx to the crown chakra is the same as neural communication along the vagus nerve from the gut to the brain. The entire process results in a state of perennial joy and unbound passion, turning the mind empty and hence light. In our following episodes, we will see how this process unfolds step by step. Thanks for listening to this episode of Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. In the next episode, I will tell you about how skeletal reposturing opens chakras through completing our bipedal skeletal evolution. Be a part of Skeletal Leap community. Subscribe to Skeletal Leap newsletter. Click on the link in the description to subscribe.